I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Guy Anderson. Be sure and check out my films. Occult Louisiana is available on Tubi. Doors of Perception is on Amazon Prime. We're working on film number 3, hopefully to be released around October. We're having a fundraiser for marketing and advertising. If you'd like to make a donation, we have links in the description. Anything is greatly appreciated. Any donation of $100 or more, and you're going to get your name in the credits of the film and a pre-release copy before anyone else. We are booking guests for June. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show Guy Anderson. He is an author and researcher that focuses on conspiracies, the occult, and hidden history. Guy, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm excellent, man. It's great to have you back. Your work highlights some of our favorite topics on this show. I look back over a decade ago when I started doing this during my journey of awakening, and I could have really never foreseen the progression of events that have brought us to this strange world we're now part of. And who better to discuss these strange times with than our friend Guy? You have a couple of books out now, and you offer daily articles about the weird and wonderful topics you research, which we're going to get into a bit as well. Before we do, remind the audience just a little bit about yourself and let them know how they can find out more.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me back on. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Um, I'm a conspiracy theorist. A lot of people don't like that term, and they connect it to the CIA and the belief that if we didn't follow the narrative regarding JFK's assassination, that as far as the CIA were concerned, we are a conspiracy theorist. But the term's older than that, and in fact, JFK himself used to refer to it too. Um, I've been researching different rabbit holes for about 30 years now. My dad introduced me to it. I ended up joining the Freemasons because I wanted to know more. I've since left. I had to formally resign due to my views and what I put online, but I hadn't been for a long time anyway, for a number of years. Um, I discovered Tartaria in late 2019, early 2020 through Max Egan, and that led me on a slightly different journey. Before that, human cloning seemed to be my favorite subject of all. It was certainly the one that fixated my imagination more than anything else. And then, as soon as I discovered Tartaria, everything else seemed to pale into insignificance because it's almost like the linchpin of all conspiracy theories. It connects so many things: resets and war,
Mm.
pharmaceuticals, energy. It's all attached to it, cloning and so on. So I wrote a book on Tartaria. I didn't know if anybody would buy it or not, but I put it out there, and to my surprise, lots of people have. I've sold over 20,000 copies now, and
Yeah.
it's now been translated. This is Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. It's been translated into Polish, German, Japanese will be out later in the year, and Spanish out next month, though I didn't foresee
Awesome.
any of that. And I've even got David Icke reading my books and supporting my work, which is another thing I never imagined. And after that, I wrote a kind of follow-up to it, which explored the Cabbage Patch Babies, which was the cloning program in more detail, which is Rise of the Clones. And as you said, I every day post on social media theories, research, thoughts, um, new topics, old topics that have been let go that I
Mm.
think we need to revisit. And I put them all, expanded upon them, and put them all in an A to Z of conspiracy theories with 87 different topics to read in my latest book. But I'm also writing a more in-depth book on Tartaria that is a lot more technical, and I hope to have that out at the end of the year.
Excellent.
So yes, that's me. I'm a retired tattoo artist, former Freemason, and tinfoil hat wearer.
Well, great, man. Looking forward to all that upcoming stuff, including the book. I thought today we'll start with what's been in the news recently that used to really get me excited, especially when I was a young kid. UFOs and extraterrestrials were some of my favorite things to ponder about, but over a decade ago, as I started to learn the sad, true nature of reality and the psychological operations we're subjected to, UFOs and extraterrestrials came quite a bit of a different thing for me. In fact, I'm not sure what they are. I have more questions now than I ever had, but let's start there with disclosure, quote unquote, rolling out. What are your thoughts about UFOs and extraterrestrials? Where are you at with the nature of what we're dealing with?
If you had have asked me that a few years ago, I would have said that I believe that there are alien civilizations that visit our world. I firmly believed that. But the more I've researched, the more I've started to feel that when we have had sightings and when we have had alien encounters that have been shared, the stories that we've heard from people over the years, I now consider them to perhaps be deep state.
Mm,
They may be reverse engineering technology that they've found. That there may be civilizations here with us now. I lean more towards them being underground and underwater than I do in the sky,
mm,
um, because there is one question that I would like to ask. If I could meet a grey, a reptilian, whoever is allegedly flying these craft that visit us, I would like to ask them one question. You've travelled millions of miles, light years, from a different galaxy far, far away. Yet why is it you can do that, but when you get to Earth, you usually crash?
mm.
It doesn't really make any sense. So I lean towards them, these craft actually being deep state, um, shared information with other civilizations, reverse engineered technology that's been uncovered that we haven't quite mastered yet. I don't know, but I think with what's going on now, with the alleged imminent arrival of Project Bluebeam,
Hmm.
into our world, then I found the recent image on real Donald Trump X feed very
Right.
unusual. It didn't take long to pick it apart and see that it was AI,
Mhm.
but why it's put out there, well, that's another rabbit hole entirely. But there's something going on, and clearly it's a psyop, in my opinion.
It's obvious that whoever or whatever is at the heart of disclosure, at the heart of rolling this out, wants to control the narrative and has been seeding the population with ideas about what extraterrestrials are for a very long time through our media and movies. Now, directly through the government, it's very interesting to see where they're going to push this narrative because we're still at quite an early stage of the release of these documents, which I believe we're not going to learn much more from than we already know. I think people who have had these personal experiences, abductions, and true encounters with what they consider extraterrestrials, I think we can learn more from them than the government. But as far as controlling the narrative, I find it interesting how these recent scientists have been going missing or dying. They could be connected with UFOs in some way or UFO research, which I find is very interesting because if there is free energy implications behind everything, that's another reason why they'd want to completely control the narrative. Any thoughts on that? The missing scientists and free energy possibilities?
Yes, I'm not sure if I'm up to date on this, but at the last count, wasn't it 13?
Yeah, something like
Uh,
that.
yeah, they do love their numbers, don't they?
Yeah.
So I believe that there is technology out there that we aren't being told about. and that every now and again someone stumbles across it or they crack something. Um, so imagine, for example, if you were a scientist working in one of these DUMs, that you finally managed to get something that they had recovered, or something from a civilization that had been left here a very, very long time ago, and finally they can get it to work. Once they know what that does, I imagine there is a fear that that information is going to be leaked. That they will, even perhaps something as slight as going home and telling your partner, we finally cracked it today. We got it to work. It does this, 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 and this. I recently spoke to someone who experienced something very similar to the Adam Project. I don't know if you've seen that movie, where his
No.
future self comes back to the past. So he's a young kid. I can't remember the name of the actor, but he played Captain America. I'm pretty sure
Okay.
it's I'm not 100% on that. My memory for names is quite bad. I have to write everything down. Um, he comes back from the future to his child self, and this was something that somebody called who refers to himself as Kevin experienced. Um, he lived on a farm. And a craft landed, and this person gets out the craft. He goes to get his gun, and the person immediately diffuses the situation, and he recognizes that this person looks familiar and it's him from the future. And he shows him some
Hmm.
technology and says, I want you to make this. And he's only 12 years old at the time, and he'd only just been given a shotgun. He lives on a farm, but he was prepared to use it. Um, anyway, he's given this information. And later on in life, in his sort of late teens, he starts working on it. And in between that, he's visited again, but this time by a woman, similar sort of craft, similar sort of costume, and so on. Um, and she gives a little bit more information to him on how to make this device.
Hmm.
Anyway, he's working with technology. He's got a very scientific mind, and he ends up actually making this device. Now, he wouldn't describe exactly what it did, but it was about the size of a baseball, and it was and it involved anti-gravity technology. He got it to rotate on its own, and then it started emitting a high frequency that he found quite painful. That evening, he goes to bed, and he'd showed his son what he had made. That evening, he goes to bed, and I don't think he'd been asleep long, and the men in black arrived, and he's told
Hmm.
that they know what he's made, and he's to destroy it. He mustn't do it again. He's scared, but a few years later, he decides to actually fire it back up again, and then he gets it to work that evening, exactly the same thing. And this time, they interrogate his son as well.
Wow.
Um, so I've spoken to somebody who's been in that position, but he never he said that the second time he didn't feel threatened. He thought, okay, you've told me not to do it. What are you really going to do? And he didn't take it that seriously. But since then, he's made another better version, and he'd been suffering from back problems. He needed surgery and migraines all his life. He got this device to work. The migraines immediately stopped within a few seconds, and his back pain
Hmm.
went. I mean, he was going to be in a wheelchair and have
Wow.
surgery for the rest of his life in a wheelchair. And now his back's completely healed. The doctors can't work it out. They don't understand what's happened. And this wasn't somebody that I was speaking to that you immediately thought, I'm not sure. This was somebody that is very academic, very intelligent, well respected, but only wanted to refer to be referred to by his first name. So I think that there is technology out there that we are not supposed to be aware of that can do all sorts of things, not just harnessing energy, but has healing properties too. And the moment somebody cracks that, I imagine a scenario where you have a laboratory with people working on these things, and the moment one of them has a breakthrough, not only have they solved the problem, but they also become a potential threat because they now know something.
Mm,
And I don't suppose for 1 minute the deep state want that coming out. So I think there are implications there if you're working in that field,
yeah,
to what you're exposed to and what you are potentially capable of sharing with other people. There's a lot of
right.
whistleblowers out there.
Well, that story would allude to the possibility that these beings are coming from the future to either assist us in some way, upgrade us, give us technology, which I often consider is a possibility. But the narrative that's being pushed by the mainstream is that these are highly advanced beings, either from different planets, maybe different dimensions, and they're starting to push more and more the types of beings that are reported. They had a news report the other day, Fox News, I believe. They were discussing the four types of extraterrestrial beings most commonly reported, either through crash retrievals or people's abduction experiences. They mentioned the gray extraterrestrial, they mentioned reptilians, I believe tall whites or Nordics, and mantis beings. These are all the beings that have been traditionally shown to us through UFO lore, at least modern UFO lore, through people's abductions experiences, what they have reported. Now, I align with what you were saying earlier that a lot of what we're experiencing is a psychological operation with UFO disclosure. And I think that people have been taken advantage of in many ways, including most likely abducted by our military, been subjected to mind control experiments, drugs, whatever it takes to have them believe that they were really abducted by these extraterrestrial beings. But if they're going to continue the narrative that these beings exist like reptilians, it's going to be interesting to see how everything plays out and what they're going to continue to show us as it relates to these beings, because reptilians is another thing that comes through this show quite often, but there's different perspectives on what we're dealing with. Many think that it's a spiritual phenomenon, that they're more demonic in nature and they aren't physical beings coming from different planets, very deceptive trickster beings. Others believe that they are physical reptilians, and many have claimed to have experienced contact with these beings, direct contact. So I don't know what to believe about any of this. You have any thoughts about the beings that were being presented?
Yes, they're the beings that people refer to most commonly.
Mm-hmm.
And with the reptilians, we often associate those with shapeshifting.
Yeah.
For example, people like David Icke have said for a very long time that the reptilians are actually the world leaders, the parasites, the bloodline families, the monarchy, that they are shapeshifters. And as far as I understand from the research I've conducted, when we call them shapeshifters, they aren't actually changing their form at all. They're changing the perception of what we see. So they never actually look any different when they stare into the mirror. They don't see anything other than their reptilian form, but we're manipulated. So we see something entirely different.
Some kind of
And I,
frequency technology to control our perception.
yeah, yeah. And I like that idea. That makes sense to me because
Hmm.
occasionally we've seen glitches. So I don't know if they can actually literally change, physically change their appearance, or whether it is something that's within our perception that they're able to manipulate. And I lean more towards that because to me that's a little bit more believable, like a mass mind control experiment.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know, I do lean towards that. Do they live underground? Are there civilizations in the inner earth that are coming up and communicating? Is that why we've got these deep underground military bases?
Right.
Because they're often associated with this kind of technology and research. So it would make sense if they were access points that, the further down you go, perhaps you then enter their world, their civilization, and
Right.
depending on your level of clearance, depends on how close you can get to that. So I suppose if I had to make a guess, I would say that they are in the inner earth, possibly underwater as well. but there are bases here. There may be continents that we're not even aware of because we have flight paths that we follow, shipping lanes that we have to follow, and we know what happens if you get close, too close to certain places. There can be a military presence. So they may already be here. They may be walking amongst us, but I do lean towards there being an association with these dumb sites across the world, and that's the reason they're underground, because there is no reason for them to be underground. Why do
Right.
they need to be underground? But if these beings, need a different sort of gas, I suppose, ultimately, then that could be an explanation for that. Is there a higher methane content, or whatever it is underground that they need to be able to survive?
Mm.
There are links as well with the Igigi, the slave race that allegedly the Anunnaki brought with them here, that they went underground and slowly morphed into the Greys, and that they are the people that created AI and
Mm.
are still controlling AI today. So I've heard lots of different theories, but my guess is there is a connection to DUMBs and underground civilizations that are a completely different species to us. And I think that like you said, I think that any alien abductions, craft that we see flying around, I think it's deep state,
Mm.
black ops. And, because if you think about what our first sort of, I suppose, exposure to alien abduction, whether we're watching sci-fi or it's a couple of people talking on a chat show, where does this anal probing come in?
It
Do you know what I mean? That was such a prevalent thing,
was.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
The anal probe. Why would somebody need to research us that is far more advanced? And why would they do it that way? So I think we have been ultimately taught to fear, and films like Independence Day, for example, haven't helped. They've compounded it further. So
Hmm.
our natural reaction, I suppose, if we saw a UFO craft, typically the public would be in fear. And if they had weapons, they would certainly try and arm themselves. Whereas if it was a benevolent species that was coming to see us, they would be greeted with hostility regardless, because we've been conditioned that way to fear. And
Yeah.
and I think that this is all leading now to Project Bluebeam, and
Mm.
it is going to be, you know, a significant proportion of the world population actually being in fear that we are going to be wiped out.
Right. And according to many victims of military or MILAB abductions, these reptilian beings are seen with military personnel. Supposedly, they have been working together for a very long time. So these beings may be part of the rollout of disclosure that we're seeing right now, right?
Well, yes, you're quite right. I'm guessing everybody watching this has seen the image of Trump with the extremely tall
Yeah.
grey, kind of a, weird that that would be out there anyway. But obviously, once you start zooming in and paying a bit more attention, you can see how badly constructed it is. But
Yeah.
it is strange that it's happening now, because we have been expecting this Project Bluebeam
Hmm.
event. But also, I wonder if it's connected to some kind of apocalypse. And by apocalypse, I don't mean in the way in which a lot of people perceive that word. But apocalypse can often mean the end of something and the beginning of a new time or period. Um, so I do wonder if this is, in biblical terms, the
Mm.
end of Satan's little season. This is the final,
Interesting.
the pivotal moment.
Well, there is a biblical narrative overtone being pushed, associated, especially with the war. You heard recent reports of soldiers complaining that their generals were telling them they're fighting to bring on the apocalypse, they're fighting for Jesus's return, which is absolutely absurd, but this new weaponized Christianity and the biblical overtones of heading into an apocalyptic era and possibly World War III bringing on an apocalypse seems to be a desired narrative in some aspects.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And you're right. I mean, that there are soldiers that have actually complained about their their what would you call it? The generals
Mm-hmm.
um, actually giving speeches pushing the fact that they are doing God's work, that they're fulfilling prophecy, that and in some cases they've claimed that Trump is, doing God's work, that he's the new Messiah. And there have been people that are not only atheists, but people from other religions serving in the military that have taken a huge objection to this. They didn't sign up for it. And of course, the hypocrisy mustn't go escaped because 10th commandment, thou shalt not kill.
Right. Yeah.
And how many people have died in the name of religion? So it
Mm.
doesn't matter why they say that they're going to war, or why people need to be killed. If there is any association with it being, a religious prophecy, or that it is in any way, shape, or form connected to Jesus or God, then they really do need to look at the Ten Commandments again, specifically number 10, thou shalt not
Yep.
kill. You can't do that. It is a hypocrisy, and I think people are getting tired of it. And also, we're seeing quite a lot of people turning to religion, to Christianity in particular. Russell Brand, who was married to Katy Perry, for people who don't know him, obviously, over here he's very well known. Allegations came out surrounding him and young girls and his promiscuity. Put my teeth
Mm-hmm.
back in. And all of a sudden, he had found God and he's baptized. And I think he then he was losing his following, but gained a new audience. So I think that there are strategies involved in claiming to be religious or having found God. Trump's been asked before what his favorite passage from the Bible was, if there's a verse that perhaps resonates with him more than any. Um, and he said that he keeps those things personal because he wasn't able to answer the question. So I think they're using religion. And in America, that's a big sector of the vote. You know, you've got a big religious belt in America, and if you're losing popularity or people aren't, following you anymore, um, then all of a sudden to start referring to the Bible and Jesus, you're going to get a lot of people back on board, and I think that they are using it. They've weaponized it, so
Mm.
to speak.
I think they've weaponized it and they are using it as illusionary propaganda to perpetuate the current collapse that we're seeing of all our old systems. They're using the war to not only bring in fear across the planet, but look at our gas prices, look at the economy, look at the financial system. Everything is crumbling, and this war is a great way to speed up some of those things. So I think that's a huge part of it, so it can destroy the old systems to bring in this new technocratic AI slave system.
Yes, yes, and that's the fundamental point, isn't it? We've gone through resets. We know that we've gone through resets. Some people suggest that this is the seventh time that we've been reset. We are the seventh generation. But prior, it always seems that they repopulate.
Mm.
AI. AI is already replacing the jobs of a huge number of people, and it's only going to get worse as AI progresses. So if they were to reset us now, how many people would they need in comparison? And that's where I see alignment to, say, the Georgia Guidestones, reducing the population by such a significant amount because we unknowingly have helped AI replace us in many circumstances.
I heard an interesting theory that I'd love to get your thoughts on. I had a guest on the other day, a couple of guests that have claimed they believe most of the population may be NPCs. We may only have a few 100 million real people. So if they want to push the depopulation narrative, they could have a great way to fake depopulation by removing all the NPCs and clones, those that already aren't real people, and push the major cataclysm narrative that these people have all died, but they were really NPCs to begin with. So that could be a great part of the depopulation psychological operation.
I have a slightly different view with the NPCs because
Mhm.
from my research, these are people that descend from the last time we reset.
Right. Yeah.
So, which we call the Cabbage Patch Babies. So, if you imagine, if you look at cloning generally, whether we're talking about the rib from Adam being removed and another life being created, in
Yeah.
Genesis, that's cloning. If we look at the Sumerian text and the story of the Anunnaki creating us in the image of the gods and then mass producing us, that's cloning. So it appears throughout history that there are people that are far more intelligent and advanced than we are that have the technology and the ability to mass produce.
Mm.
Now, of course, you've got companies today like CloneAid that will clone you. It's on their website. You can fill in the
Right.
form and they will clone you. And people have been getting their pets cloned for some time, including the president of Argentina. And then you've got Clayton and Scamper, the original and the clone that was a barrel racer, one of the most successful barrel racers in America. And Clayton, the clone, is now out to stud. So that dispels the myth that clones can't reproduce. I mean, if we
Mm.
look in biblical terms, the story in Genesis, or we look at the Sumerian text, we are a direct result of cloning. Going back thousands of 250,000 years. So clones clearly can reproduce, and Dolly the sheep had offspring. So we know that's not a thing.
Yeah.
But I think that if they reproduced en masse hundreds of thousands of babies towards the end of the 1800s that we refer to as the Cabbage Patch babies, and you are a direct descendant of those, and let's say both of your parents going back great, 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 I think it's five greats, grandparents were cloned, then there's no genetic memory.
Mm. Right.
So what's going on in the world right now, they might not necessarily agree with it, they might not like it, but they don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong other than the fact that they
Mm.
don't agree. If your ancestry goes back thousands of years, because DNA stores memory, we're
Yeah.
carrying the memory of our ancestors in our DNA, and I think we can access that.
Hmm.
And we have this inner voice that tells us not to take a medical intervention. We look up at the sky and we see chemtrails, not contrails. We look at world leaders and we see them as puppets. We don't vote. We don't watch the news. There's certain foods we avoid, and naturally this inner voice tells us not to do things. And I think that's pulling from genetic memory because we know deep down inside that this isn't how we're supposed to live, and it's not how people lived before.
Hmm.
If your ancestors only go back to the last reset, there's no genetic memory of anything. All you actually see is progression, that we've advanced over the last 250 years. You know, they don't see anything other than that. So I do believe that's the difference. So your NPC today, I think, is more likely to be a direct result of a lot of ancestry that stemmed from cloning just after the last great reset. And the people that are wide awake have the genetic memory to know that this isn't right.
Mm.
Um, Dolores Cannon estimated, I think it was 80% of the population are NPCs, soulless as she called them. Other people think it's closer to 60%. I think if they're going to wipe people out, and of course along the way you've got people that have married NPCs.
Yeah.
So I've got friends that don't think how I do. They don't understand. They don't want to, and I don't know if that is because ignorance is bliss or that they don't have that genetic memory. But we've
Interesting.
interacted and mixed so much that I think it's diluted now. So you perhaps have people that we would refer to as an NPC that have the ability to wake up,
Hmm.
but I think that the majority of the public don't, and that's due to the overwhelming number of clones that entered our civilization in the 1800s. I think that is connected to it.
Mm.
So if you were going to wipe out people, the clones would be, or the NPCs would be easier because they're more likely to eat the food they shouldn't and take the next booster
Yeah.
and any other vaccine offered to them. But I think that in addition to that, we are probably more of a target because
Mm.
we are constantly exposing what they're doing and resisting what they'd like us
I'm
to do.
wondering if we're more of a target, not only because we're a threat to them, but we are connected to source, and that source energy is what they're trying to harvest. So essentially, they're going to need us around because they need that energy.
Yes, and we also don't know how long this is going to play out for, because if you look at if we refer to the previous civilization, the period of 1,000 years as being the millennial reign, and that ended in 1776, which would in theory be 976 because of the timeline manipulation.
Mm.
If a season is a quarter, then we are up at the 4th of July 250 years from the last Great Reset, representing a
Mm.
quarter. So I think it's this year that we're going to see things really unravel. What happens after that? I don't know. I mean, we don't know what is predicted to take place when Satan's little season comes to an end, or New World Order finally crashes. Do we ascend? Do
Mm.
they all disappear? Are they, they're all building underground bunkers, aren't they? People with significant wealth are all building underground bunkers. They know something's coming. My guess is they're going to press the button.
Mm.
I think they're going to wipe us out. And I don't think they're going to worry too much about whether we're an NPC or wide awake. I
Yeah.
think yeah.
Well, earlier you were discussing AI and the emerging data centers that are eating up all of our natural resources. Do you have any thoughts about what could really be behind the data centers and what they represent?
Well, you've also got reports with those centers of causing illnesses and
Hmm.
problems within the areas where they've been established. I don't ultimately know, but I think we're leading towards a sort of Skynet
Yeah.
situation. And I think that's what those centers ultimately are.
People have compared them to pieces of a microchip. If you look from an aerial view, the way they're emerging and connecting with each other, it looks like they're building massive microchips to connect with what? Who knows?
Well, I do believe that we live on a circuit board.
Hmm.
Now, in some I suppose in some thoughts, people would perhaps associate them with ley lines.
Hmm.
But I do think that we live on a giant circuit board, and by connecting certain parts of that circuit board together, then I think then you have power magnified. So a little bit like a circuit board that has elements missing to it, patches of solder, or microchips that aren't there. Now, years ago, I think these were star forts. I think star forts
Ah.
connected, and certain buildings
Hmm.
connected everything, because having studied Tartaria for so long, they appear to follow the golden ratio. So when they build a city, the key buildings, if you can literally pick anywhere. Washington is a good example, but any city, and you pick out the old world buildings that we're familiar with, that Greco-Roman style, and churches and cathedrals, copper domed roofed buildings. If you pick those out and you are to get a map or even screenshot a map, and then go onto your phone, and you can draw lines connecting them all, and they all line up. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's Masonic. No, these buildings are far older than that.
Hmm.
So these were once connecting this circuit board, and I think that is another way of harnessing telluric energy, and also working in harmony with the earth itself. So everything's vibrating at the right frequency. And I think from that, you're able to have healthier people, people that are kind of more euphoric than depressed,
Hmm.
on the basis that happy people are more productive, crime reduces, fertility increases, you have less disease. And I think that was what I call the golden age, the period of Tartaria or the millennial reign. Because of course the millennial reign only really is relevant to Abrahamic religions, not the rest of the world. So I think that what they're doing is a kind of a synthetic version.
An inversion of Tartaria.
Yes, I like that.
Mm.
Yes, yeah, I do like that. It's kind of a new world disorder.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I think that Michelle Gibson, who's worth looking at
Yeah,
on
yeah.
YouTube, um, she's done a lot of work into this. She believes that they spiked the grid, that the grid was spiked, and that's what caused cataclysmic events. That's what's caused mud floods, ice ages throughout periods of time, and so on. Fires, floods, quakes, eruptions. Everything is connected to man-made um, decisions to spike the grid. I think that they're now using the grid to connect all of these centers together. And
Mm.
so they end up with one huge superpower.
What about AI? We've already seen these strange events unfolding with people's interactions with AI, the suicides, self preservation, the lying that AI does, very strange behavior from programmed algorithms. Do you think it's possible that we could see sentience emerging from AI in the near future?
No, I don't. I think no matter how hard they try, I don't think it's ever going to have what we have.
Mm.
Um, because it's controlled, it follows algorithms, and it's very manipulative. And now, one thing that ChatGPT recently started doing is limiting the number of questions you can ask without handing over money.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
And once you get to the next stage, you're still limited with how many questions you can ask, but it goes up to £200, which is about $250
Wow.
a month to access the next tier.
That's crazy.
Where are, yeah, yeah. So you think what you're going to be spending a year, you're talking about £3,000, roughly $3,500. Now, I think there are probably people out there that have a job. They might work for a large company, I don't know, accountancy, law, whatever it is, that are using ChatGPT to do, the lion's share of their work.
Hmm.
I think they're going to wake up one day. They're going to go through the pain of getting it for free, then having to pay to get more information and use it more, then pay more, then pay more, then pay more. And one day they'll wake up and they'll say that this service is no longer available without the Neuralink
Yeah,
or equivalent. I can see that coming.
yeah.
What ultimately is AI? It's as good as the information you put in, but it also pushes a narrative. It doesn't like to go anywhere outside the narrative. So there's resistance. It's pushing agendas. It will never, in my opinion, it will never be sentient because
Hmm.
it doesn't have what it takes. It can't think outside the box. It can't consider alternative opinions. All it is a program. That's all it is. And all the information it gets, it's regurgitating. The more information that's out there, the more it will appear to know. But the bottom line is it doesn't know anything. It's finding things for us faster than we have the time to
Hmm.
do.
One of the biggest problems I see emerging is I don't think we'll be able to ever trust video evidence again.
Mm.
AI is being used in such a deceptive manner across the board by so many people. I'm not sure how we'll ever be able to navigate what's real or not being presented to us in video form.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And the danger with that is, of course, if we are able to right now create an AI video that's convincing, and I'm sure the more money we throw at it, the more convincing
Yeah.
it will be. If we can do that now, how long have they been able to do it, and how
Mm-hmm.
much better than
Exactly.
us can they do it now? So this could have been going on for a very, very long time because
Yeah.
there are people out there that have researched this far greater than I have, and they believe it goes back to Atlantis. That
Oh.
AI has been running everything forever, but from the research that I've done, without going into theories that can't be substantiated. The technology behind ChatGPT, for example, is about 70 years old. So,
That we know
that
of.
yes, that we know of.
Yeah.
So that throws everything during our life so far absolutely everything we've ever seen might not be real.
Right. That's
All of it.
crazy. Yeah.
You know, so,
Especially the high impact events that they are trying to pass off to elicit this emotional response from us.
yes, yes, you're absolutely right. And that's exactly what it does. And that's the idea, isn't it? We put the news on. I mean, I don't watch the news, but I get so much information. I kind of know what's going on, but I don't actually watch TV. Um, so just imagine. I mean, I've got this theory that there's something going to happen around the World Cup
Mm.
because you that is one of the there are lots of different events that take place. Perhaps the moon landing would be the most significant, where you get people from all over the world. Now, I'm not saying we landed on the moon, incidentally. I'm talking about the event
Hmm.
itself. That's one of the few times when everybody, no matter where they live, no matter what their beliefs are, no matter what they're doing, is going to tune in and watch that happen.
Hmm.
I think the opening of the World Cup, perhaps a key match between certain two particular countries, or the final of the World Cup, will be the time when the majority of people across the world are all going to be watching. Now, I have absolutely no interest in football. I used to play it when I was a kid, I switched to rugby, and I sort of lost interest in football. But one thing's for sure, there are going to be more people watching that World Cup final than there are watching anything else at the same time
Hmm.
this year. So if you wanted to do something, stage an event like Project Bluebeam, the World Cup final would be the place to do it.
Right. Well, speaking of staged events and psychological manipulation were presented on television, have you seen the most recent conspiracy theory involving Admiral Flynn on a news report where it looks exactly like he's
Yeah.
wearing a mask? You can see the flap, you can see someone or something underneath. Their neck is actually moving when it talks, and it's obviously a mask. This even hit mainstream US news today. I saw a few articles of them trying to explain it away with ridiculous different reasons. The level of theater that we are subjected to is beyond unfathomable, but now it seems that they don't even care that we're starting to realize all of this is fake. They just keep it rolling and they present it as if they don't even care that their presentation is so shitty that the guy's mask is visible on TV.
Yes, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I was actually
Yeah.
looking at that again this morning, and you can clearly see, because obviously his shirt's open, the top button's open, he's not wearing a tie. You can see, now some people have said it's AI, some
Right.
people have said it's a shadow, but
Hmm,
but but it's not. It's not.
it's
You
not.
can clearly see that's a mask.
Yeah.
And if anybody is particularly interested in that, then the story that about Gucci Mane and skin suits is really worth diving into.
Mm,
There'll be stuff on BitChute and YouTube about that. Um, so yes, I wonder, A, are they getting sloppy, or B, and I'm thinking of Jim Carrey in the back of my mind as well at the
yeah,
same
yeah.
time. Or B, is there somebody out there in a very, very high position that is doing this on purpose to try and wake people up and show
Mm,
them what's really going on? It could be either. Or there is an alternative. Do they just not care anymore?
that's it. Yeah. It's crazy. You mentioned Gucci Mane. I
Mm.
haven't heard too much about this. Can you tell us a little bit more about what this is?
Well, this is a skin suit. This is an entire skin suit.
Hmm.
Um, but I'd have to go and get. I've got the paperwork on it. Do you want me to quickly grab it?
Sure. Yeah. If we can
Yeah,
go over that.
literally, it's a few feet away.
Yeah. Yeah. No worries. I think I heard
Um,
about this briefly recently a couple of years ago, but I don't really have the full story.
yeah, it involves the Illuminati, um, and it's kind of connected to what's really going on, with cloning, and a lot of the information. with cloning that we have today,
Hmm.
specifically surrounding Hollywood, and and celebrities, and also world leaders and their replacements, comes from initially comes from Donald Marshall, who was the
Right.
whistle sort of 2012. But Gucci Mane, yeah, it's to do with the American rapper Hopsin. I don't know if you know him. His real name's Marcus Jamal Hobson.
No, not familiar.
Okay, well, he was he was kind of known for his lyrics. The music he was putting out there was quite dark,
Hmm.
um, and he sort of gained an almost a cult-like status ultimately. Um, Mind of Hops was the series that he brought out, and then I think Mind 5, Ill Mind. Um, but the song was a huge success, and he had quite a big following. But the Illuminati said that in exchange for his success, he had to sacrifice something.
Mm.
And they said that you're going to have to pay back. You sold your soul to the devil to become a famous recording artist. You're now going to have to pay the price. We want something in return.
Yeah.
Um, and they said to him that if he didn't carry out what they'd asked him to, then they would hurt his family. So he's sent to an office. This is on Wilshire Boulevard in LA, and they opened a door, and in this office, the office is all white, totally sterile. And he knows it's the Illuminati that he's talking to. He knows who these people are. They're the ones that gave him the record contract, that signed him to the label. Anyway, there's a Gucci Mane bodysuit in this office.
Oh,
And he
wow.
says, and literally, I'll tell you exactly what he said. Oh no, please don't tell me what I think that is what I think it is. And they replied, yes, that's exactly what you think it is, pal. It's the
Whoa.
Gucci suit, and it's the only way you can repay what you've done. Not only did we give you the deal, but you've put information in your lyrics, in your songs, and your music that's exposing things that you were told you couldn't talk about.
Damn.
So that's it. So they informed him that they ran facial recognition programs, and that he was a match, and that they said that you are going to be this man. So Gucci Mane was actually locked up somewhere for not going along with Illuminati orders at the time. He was actually in prison.
Mm.
So Hobson said yes. They forced him to wear the suit, and that was it.
Jeez.
From that moment on, if you saw Gucci Mane, it was Hobson wearing a bodysuit, and he was interviewed and he talked about this. He actually said exactly what had gone on, and that was the first time I'd read somewhere about this happening. But he has given interviews about it.
Wow.
Now, why he's able to do that now, I don't know.
Yeah.
Has he done what he needed to do? Has he decided he doesn't care about the repercussions? Or has he been replaced and his clone is out there now, sort of disclosing information, but doing it in a way that it doesn't become mainstream on the news tonight, but it hits underground. So people like you and I are discussing it, but it never actually reaches
Yeah.
the masses. So yeah, the bodysuit thing is around, has been around for a while. And then when you've got to throw Jim Carrey into the pot,
Mm.
that was not Jim Carrey that we saw. And
Right.
people will say it was someone wearing a mask or a bodysuit. Well, that doesn't automatically mean that he goes from being left-handed to right-handed or vice versa. Giving autographs at the end to the public, he was using his other hand.
Mm.
Um, when he had been interviewed leading up to this, he'd said that he had no interest. That what were we celebrating? These people are on a pedestal. Um, in one interview, he said on a outside some sort of event, I can't remember what it was, but he was caught on camera, and they then interviewed him, and he said that he'd come to the most pathetic and pointless event he could find, and this was it. One that's celebrating people for nothing, for no reason at all. All of these award ceremonies are pointless. and it's an absolute joke, blah, blah, blah. Then 5 minutes later, he looks completely different, and he's up
Wow.
there receiving an award at the exact sort of events he'd shunned 5 minutes ago. It was not him.
That is absolutely crazy. Our reality has become stranger than fiction in so many ways. I'm wondering if another reason they're presenting us with obvious fakery and masks on TV and their psyops are falling apart is because they know that the reset is in place, that all the pieces are in place for them to absolutely crash everything. And it doesn't matter anymore that we're starting to figure it out because they're about to pull the trigger on something that would reset humanity.
Yes, yes. You get that feeling, don't you? I mean, there's a part of me that wants to believe that there are. We've got this sort of this phrase, the white hats, the
Mm-hmm.
good guys,
Right.
or the Galactic Federation. I don't know if these people or these beings exist. I've got
I
no
want
idea.
to believe, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. But if they have infiltrated certain sectors, then they could be doing this on purpose. We're always looking for clues in what we see. We're always trying to pick apart what appears on the news. Um, but but the majority of people aren't. They don't see anything than what's presented in front of them. They don't look any deeper than that. So if you've got somebody genuinely on our side that's behind, or a large group of people that have infiltrated and they're behind these things, they could easily be allowing these things to slip through and say, don't
Yeah.
worry, who cares? It's the public. They're not going to notice. And who cares if they do? It'll do for today. We'll
Mm-hmm.
sort it out. We'll make improvements later on, but who cares? And that could be, what's happened with the Admiral, that
Yeah.
because they could have quite easily done the top button up. They could have
Yeah.
just stuck a
Yeah.
tie.
They could have just done that.
Yeah, stuck a tie on him or done the
Yeah.
top button up or made him wear a roll neck or something. So I do often wonder if there are people that have infiltrated, various government agencies and societies, and that they are trying to show the public what's really going on.
Right.
But they'll still dismiss it in the majority of cases. They'll say, "Oh no, I think it probably is just a shadow. It's just
Mm.
a conspiracy theory."
Have they made us too dumbed down to where even their psychological operations aren't working effectively? I don't know. There's so many possibilities with this. To close out, I remember I asked you a bit about this last time if there were still things like arrests being made in the UK over social media posts, that type of totalitarian behavior still occurring.
A friend of mine was arrested and he was in court just this week.
Mm,
He shared a post on Facebook. That's all he did. He shared a post. Now, I can't remember exactly what the post was about, but it was definitely something that I wouldn't share or comment on. I think it was to do with male masculinity and sexuality and stuff. And he's quite outspoken. He's got a
mm.
podcast called the Belfast Bapcast.
Ah,
It's
I've
called.
been on his show, Mark.
Oh, well, you know Mark.
Yes, I know Mark. Yeah.
Mark Young.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was on
So
my
so
show as well. Yeah.
oh crikey. Well, he was in court this week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So yeah, because he shared a post that in theory he shouldn't have done.
Mm,
Because we don't have freedom of speech anymore. I don't know it was taken away without our knowledge, but it's definitely gone. Um, he was in court, so yes, that's the latest one I know of. But there was quite a well-known case of a woman that was actually sent to prison. She served jail
yeah.
time for something on Twitter. I think it was Twitter then. Obviously, it's now X. It might have been X, but I flip between calling it X and Twitter. It's the same bloody thing. Um, although X, obviously, we know why it's called X. It's
Yeah.
Saturn now, isn't it? And um,
Yeah.
yeah, you and I both know someone that was in court this week. It got kicked out because he had
Oh, good.
CCTV footage. But it got kicked out. The case that they've actually dismissed is him allegedly resisting arrest and becoming aggressive or violent towards the police officers that came at 4 o'clock in the morning to arrest him.
Mm,
when actually he didn't do anything, and they sprayed him in the eyes with pepper
Oh,
spray
wow.
anyway. Well, he had CCTV, so he took the footage to
Oh,
court.
great.
And the judge immediately kicked it out. But what will happen regarding the post is yet to be
Mm,
decided. It's ongoing.
yeah,
But that's very close to home. Someone
it
I
is.
speak to every week. You
Yeah.
know,
It's madness. Well, Guy, this was fantastic. Any closing thoughts that you'd like to leave us with, and also remind the audience how they can find out more about you?
Yeah, well, if they want to find out more about my work, if they want to follow me on Facebook or YouTube or read my books or my blogs, then my website is always the best place. And because the links are there for everything. And that's the tartarianempire.co.uk, the tartarianempire.co.uk. And on Facebook, I'm just Guy Anderson. They can find me. But on YouTube, and my group on Facebook are named after my first book, Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. The 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 only thing that I suppose that I think that we need to focus on now is unity. We are never going to agree on everything. Flat Earth, ball, spinning ball. Have we been to the moon? Haven't we? We're never going to agree on all of these things. And I think we've got to accept the fact that our exposure to different information during our lives will give us a different opinion and a different point of view and perspective on things. But we all share one problem. What's going on needs to be stopped. Now, if we can all just agree on that and worry about everything else later, I think we stand a chance. So I think your sexuality, the color of your skin, the language you speak, your faith, belief system, whether or not you think we landed on the moon or not, or is 9/11 a conspiracy or just an unfortunate terrorist attack that happened, that I think we can just dismiss all of those things for a moment. If we're going to get through this, I believe the biggest fear they have and the biggest weapon that we have is us uniting. Because if we could unite, then we could change the world in a split second. And
Mm,
that, I think, is something they're scared of. And that is why I think we have different languages as well to make it harder traditionally to communicate. So
yeah.
unity, we've got to stand together because we've all got to agree on one thing, and that is it's time these people just I don't really want to swear, but they just did one.
Eh,
We're done. We're done with them now. Time they went.
yeah, right on. Guy, thank you so much. This was fantastic. We'll definitely be doing this again. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. See y'all then. Watch Doors of Perception now on Amazon Prime. Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion? Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order. We live in an incredible age of information. More and more, we're discovering that we've been lied to and misled about much of our human history. Cory Hughes is providing profound revelations about World War I, World War II, the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination, and much, much more on his new Substack, Bloody History. Subscribe now for as little as $5 monthly. Just click that link right in the description to get started now and learn about our true history. Hello, friends. If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brainsupreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order.